What truly happened to Adolf Hitler in his final desperate hours? For decades, this question has fueled speculation, conspiracy theories, and intense historical debate. The end of the Second World War in Europe hinged on the fate of one man, hidden deep beneath the shattered streets of his capital. As the Soviet Red Army closed in, the world held its breath, waiting for news. Was he captured? Did he escape? Or did he meet his end in the concrete tomb he had built for himself? The final 48 hours of Hitler's life are a story of collapse, betrayal, and a chilling conclusion to a reign of terror that had consumed the world in fire and blood for 12 long years. The setting for this final act was the Führer bunker. This was not a grand palace, but a subterranean maze of reinforced concrete and steel, located some 16 meters below the Reich Chancellery Garden. It was a self-contained world of stale air, the constant hum of generators, and the oppressive feeling of being buried alive. Here, surrounded by a small group of his most loyal followers and staff, Hitler presided over the phantom armies of a Reich that had ceased to exist. The world above was a hellscape, but down below, a different kind of drama was unfolding, one dictated by delusion, desperation, and the impending sense of absolute doom. Understanding these final moments is more than just a historical exercise. It is crucial to closing the book on one of history's darkest chapters. For the Allied powers, his confirmed demise was essential to declare total victory and begin the process of denazification. For the German people, it marked the definitive end of the Third Reich and the leader they had followed into catastrophe. Any ambiguity surrounding his fate would leave a dangerous void, one that could be filled with myths of survival and the potential for a resurgent Nazism. The world needed certainty. It needed proof that the architect of so much suffering was truly gone. This enclosed subterranean world became the final stage for the Götterdämmerung, the twilight of the gods, that Hitler and his propagandists had so often invoked. Its inhabitants ranged from fanatical loyalists like Joseph Goebbels to military adjutants trying to maintain a semblance of order amidst total chaos. Also present was Eva Braun, Hitler's long-term companion, whom he would marry just hours before their end. Their interactions, decisions, and ultimate fates provide a minute-by-minute account of a dictatorship imploding upon itself. The story of these last hours is the story of the end of the Third Reich itself, told from its very epicenter. The immediate aftermath of Berlin's fall was a whirlwind of confusion, misinformation, and deliberate propaganda. The Soviets were the first to reach the Reich Chancellery. They controlled the site and all the initial evidence. Their handling was shrouded in secrecy and in suspicion, driven by Stalin's paranoia. For weeks, the official Soviet line shifted, at times claiming Hitler had escaped, perhaps to Spain or Argentina. This ambiguity planted seeds for conspiracy theories that sprouted and flourished for decades, creating a thick fog of myth. Our primary goal is to cut through that fog. We will reconstruct the final 48 hours, relying on verified, corroborated evidence. We will separate established facts from pervasive myths. That requires careful examination of multiple sources. Eyewitness testimonies from bunker survivors will be examined, secretaries, officers, guards. First-hand accounts are invaluable, yet they must be cross-referenced and critically assessed. Memory can be flawed, motives can be complex. Beyond testimonies, we'll examine forensic evidence and documentary evidence forming the historical backbone. This includes the crucial dental records, which provided the first definitive scientific match. We will examine Soviet autopsy reports, the physical state of the bunker, and recovered fragments of official and personal documents. Through this rigorous multi-layered approach, a coherent narrative emerges. Our objective is to clarify, not sensationalize. We'll address lingering questions and directly confront popular conspiracy theories, showing why they don't hold up against the evidence. In this minute-by-minute investigation, we will present that truth, finally and definitively answering what happened in the Führer bunker in late April 1945. By April of 1945, Berlin was no longer a city. It was a ghost of a metropolis, a sprawling ruin under constant apocalyptic bombardment. The vibrant heart of the Third Reich had been reduced to a skeletal landscape, streets choked with the debris of a collapsing civilization. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke, cordite, and death. For the remaining citizens, life had devolved into a primal struggle for survival. They huddled in cellars, in makeshift shelters, bin Schaubagwein, in Schaubennetz, aber Jaubar, and shelled Berlin, their days and nights punctuated by the scream of incoming Soviet artillery shells, the so-called Stalin's organs, which rained down relentlessly. The thunderous roar of Soviet guns from the east kept reminding everyone of the Red Army's inexorable advance. Marshal Zhukov's forces were grinding through the city's outer defenses, street by bloody street. The defenders were a motley collection, exhausted Wehrmacht veterans, teenage boys from the Hitler Youth, and old men from the Volkssturm, fighting with desperate futility. Amidst this Götterdämmerung, the Nazi center shrank to the government district. The Reichstag was a hollowed shell, the Reich Chancellery a shattered wreck, and beneath them all, the Führer bunker. The Soviet assault was more than military. It was vengeance, for villages burned, every citizen murdered, and every inch of homeland scorched by invasion. The fall of Berlin would be the brutal final punctuation on the war in Europe. On April 20, 1945, Adolf Hitler celebrated his 56th birthday. Previously marked by massive parades and national celebrations, it was now a grim, pathetic affair deep within the Führer bunker. Hermann Göring, Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, Martin Bormann. They offered hollow congratulations to a shadow of a leader. His stoop was more pronounced, his hands trembled uncontrollably, his eyes were glazed with fatigue and delusion. The ceremony was a charade of normalcy. Instel Lori, Instel Non. Reviewing a detachment of Hitler Youth boys, he patted their cheeks. Then he pinned iron crosses on their small chests. These boys were said to fight Soviet tanks with handheld anti-tank weapons. After the ceremony, the senior Nazis retreated into the bunker for a final war conference. He ordered phantom armies to launch counterattacks. His generals stood by, unable or unwilling to confront the full bleak reality. This birthday conference marked a crucial turning point. Göring, Himmler, made excuses and departed Berlin. They abandoned their Führer to his fate. 2 days after his birthday, on April 22, the final illusions of military salvation were shattered. During a tense afternoon situation conference, Hitler was informed that Steiner's counterattack had never materialized. The forces assigned were a fiction. Upon hearing this news, Hitler reportedly flew into a volcanic rage. For the first time in front of his stunned generals and staff, he admitted the war was lost. This moment of terrifying clarity was followed by a pivotal declaration. Hitler announced that he would not flee Berlin, he would stay in the capital. He declared that he would die in Berlin, he would not suffer the humiliation of being captured alive like Mussolini, whose body had been desecrated by Italian partisans. Following his outburst and decision, Hitler ordered his personal adjutant, Julius Schaub, to burn all documents, personal documents, official documents. This was an act of erasing history. He then dismissed a large portion of his remaining staff, telling them to try to break out of Berlin. He was winnowing down his court. The bunker was now sealed, not just by Soviet steel, but by the Führer's own command. The countdown to the end had truly begun. On the evening of April 23, a bombshell landed in the bunker that had nothing to do with Soviet artillery. A telegram arrived from Berchtesgaden, sent by Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, Hitler's designated successor. The telegram was handed to him by Martin Bormann. Bormann framed the message not as a loyal inquiry, but as an ultimatum, a blatant power grab. Already volatile, Hitler flew into another uncontrollable rage. He raved about disloyalty, ingratitude, corruption. The response was swift and brutal. He stripped the Reichsmarschall of all his offices and accused him of treason. An order was sent to the SS to immediately arrest Göring and his staff. The shock of Göring's betrayal had barely subsided when an even greater blow fell just a few days later. On the evening of April 28, it announced that Heinrich Himmler, the Reichsführer SS, the architect of the Holocaust, had been secretly attempting to negotiate a surrender with the Western Allies. The news hit Hitler like a physical assault. Himmler's was an act of unimaginable personal perfidy. Der treue Heinrich, the faithful Heinrich. In his fury, Hitler's vengeance was immediate. He could not arrest Himmler, but he could punish Himmler's personal representative in the bunker, SS Gruppenführer Hermann Fegelein. Despite Eva Braun's quiet pleas, Hitler was merciless. Fegelein was dragged from his cell, stripped of his rank, and executed. This brutal act served as a chilling message. No one was safe. The revelation of Himmler's treason galvanized him into action. In the dead of night, he summoned Traudl Junge to dictate his last will and testament. He announced his decision to marry Eva Braun, ordered that their bodies were to be burned, and appointed Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz Reich president. The documents were completed around 4 a.m. Joseph Goebbels, Martin Bormann, General Krebs, and General Bergdorf were summoned to witness and sign. Immediately after the signing, Hitler proceeded with another bizarrely formal ceremony. He announced his intention to finally marry Eva Braun. When it came time to sign the marriage certificate, she proudly signed as Eva Hitler, née Braun. Following the ceremony, a grim wedding reception was held. Hitler spoke quietly about the good old days, but his conversation soon turned dark. He told his secretaries that he was releasing them from their service, giving them cyanide capsules as a potential means of escape. As the final hours ticked away, Hitler's paranoia fixated on one last detail: the reliability of the poison, supplied by the SS, now headed by the traitor Heinrich Himmler. He needed absolute certainty. The chosen subject was Blondie, Hitler's German shepherd. He ordered his personal physician to administer a capsule to the dog. The effect was instantaneous. Hitler went to see the dog's body. He showed no emotion, glanced at the dead animal, then walked away. On the afternoon of April 30th, at approximately 2:30 p.m., the final act began to unfold. Hitler and Eva emerged from their private quarters. He walked down the line, shaking hands with each person. Eva Hitler followed him. She tried to offer a few words of comfort. After shaking the last hand, Hitler and Eva turned and walked back toward their private suite. The heavy steel door closed behind them. After the door to Hitler's private suite closed, an eerie silence fell over the corridor. The minutes stretched into an eternity. After what felt like an age, but was likely around 3:30 p.m., a single, distinct gunshot was heard from behind the door. Linge and Bormann slowly pushed open the door. He was slumped on the sofa. He had shot himself through the right temple. To his left, Eva Hitler was also dead, having taken a cyanide capsule, carrying Hitler's blanket-wrapped body. They struggled up the 4 flights of stairs to the emergency exit in the Reich Chancellery Garden. The bodies were laid in a shallow depression. They emptied the cans over the 2 corpses. They ignited with a massive whoosh. They raised their arms in a final, stiff Hitler salute. For the next several hours, the fire raged. However, the open-air cremation was not efficient. What was left was a charred, blackened, and incomplete set of remains. On May 2nd, soldiers of the Soviet Red Army stormed the ruins of the Reich Chancellery. The task was assigned to SMERSH, death to spies. On May 4th, a SMERSH unit discovered a shell crater. There, buried under a thin layer of earth, they found the charred and badly burned bodies. The most vital evidence to emerge from the autopsy was the dental material. The jawbones became the centerpiece of the entire investigation. Their hunt led them to Kata Häusermann, a dental assistant, and Fritz Echtmann, a dental technician. In a secret meeting on May 11th, both Häusermann and Echtmann independently identified the unique and extensive bridgework as belonging to Adolf Hitler. Their testimony, combined with the X-rays, provided a perfect match. However, this confirmation was not shared with the world. Stalin chose to sit on the evidence, preferring to hold the Hitler escaped card as a tool of political leverage. The most persistent myth is the theory of his escape. In reality, there is not a single piece of credible, verifiable evidence for these escape scenarios. Historical consensus rests on 3 pillars of evidence: consistent testimony of dozens of direct eyewitnesses, recovered jawbones perfectly matched to Hitler's dental records, and modern forensic analysis reconfirming earlier findings. When modern science reaffirmed this match in 2018, it closed the final chapter on any lingering, legitimate scientific doubt. In the end, the truth is far more pathetic and squalid than the myths. There was no daring escape, no secret life in Argentina, and no grand Wagnerian finale. Instead, the man who plunged a continent into darkness and orchestrated the murder of millions ended his life as a coward, hiding in a concrete hole beneath the ruins of his shattered dream. He shot himself on a blood-stained sofa, leaving his followers to burn his body in a ditch. This ignominious end is the final fitting verdict of history. The evidence is conclusive, the case is closed, and the world can be certain that the architect of the Third Reich died with his monstrous creation in the rubble of Berlin in 1945.